Okay, hello everybody. Hello. Zhishan, could I borrow your charger? Thank you, cool. Hello everybody. Welcome back to another fun-filled lecture of COMP1511. So yesterday we looked at loops, and today we will be looking at more loops, and loops inside loops, and stopping loops. So the slides are available on the course website, like I showed yesterday, under lectures, under my name. Hopefully you did this. Thank you. Try it. There we go. Cool, and so today's lecture, hopefully after this you'll know a bit about while loops, and also nested while loops, which are loops inside loops, using them to sort of solve simple problems, and know about the course style guide. So some admin things. Echo 360 was sad last night. The lecture video it was 8:45 p.m. when it was finally working on Echo 360, so that was like 4 or 5 hours. I'm sorry, I don't know why that happened. But the lecture recordings are all on WebCMS. Normally, like 20 minutes after the lecture, it's working. They're ready. Cool, so next point, the weekly tests start this week. You might have seen in the course outline or heard at the start, we have these weekly tests or weekly coding tests. Shh, please be quiet. So they're going to start this week. Information will be released either today or tomorrow by Andrew Taylor. I think he said they're due the end of Monday. I know that weekly tests sound scary, like, test exams every week. Don't be scared. They're designed to just sort of let you know if you're on track. And the idea is that as long as you do them, you'll get marks. So if you attempt it and get a question wrong, you'll still get half a mark. If you get the question right, you'll get a mark. There's either going to be 2 or 3 questions. The first one will be like very straightforward and easy. And then if there's 3, the last one will be a bit trickier. And the second one will be sort of middle-ish. Another point, the course style guide has been published, and I'll go through that in the second half, what that actually means. Cool. So hopefully this is familiar from yesterday. If we want to do something multiple times, we can use a loop. And so a while loop means keep doing this while this condition is true. And so there's sort of 4 sections of a loop, I guess. Initialization, the condition, the statement, and the update. So initializing is setting up the variables that we're going to use in our loop. I'm talking fast again, I'll talk slowly. Initialization is setting up the variables we're going to be using in our loop. The condition is the while something is true. The statements are the things we do inside the loop. And then the update is how we go from one iteration of the loop to the next. And just some definitions there. You might have heard me say iteration or iterate. If you're not familiar with computing, you might not be familiar with these words. To iterate just means to do something over and over again. And so an iteration is like one repetition of a process. So for example, when we have a loop and we go through the loop once, that's like one iteration of the loop. And if I ever say words that you don't understand what they mean because I forget that this is a technical word, then raise your hand, yell out something. If you don't understand something or a word, just please tell me. Cool, and so one of the things we do with loops, sort of one of the common things, is counting things. So for example, do this thing n different times, so some number of different times. And sometimes it's explicit. So I think yesterday we had a loop that printed out hello 10 times or something, and so that's explicitly, we are doing this thing 10 times. Print this out 10 times. Sometimes it's not so clear that it's still like a counting loop, right? So print out the numbers from 1 to 10. That's still like a counting thing, right? You sort of count the iteration of the loop that you're up to is the number that you would print out. So the first time you print out 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then things like calculating the power of a number. So like 2 to the power of 3 is 2 times 2 times 2. And again, that might not be obvious that like you can do with a loop, 2 the first time times 2 times 2. But basically, many things you do with loops will be, you have a counter in your loop, and then each time that increases, you do something. Right, and that's what it says right here. So we use a loop counter, which is the variable that tells us how many times we've done the thing. Yep, so to print out hello world 10 times, the counter starts at 0. We print it out, increase the counter to 1, print it out, increase the counter to 2, same, we've done it twice, and so on. And then when our counter is 10, we stop 10 times. And we looked at that yesterday. Hopefully that is familiar. And in terms of how we would code this, let me just make sure I have the slides right. Cool. So the logic, if we want to print out hello world 10 times, we want to sort of count how many times we've done it so far. And so we need to have our counter. When we print it out, increase our counter by 1, and then stop when our counter hits the end. I just said those words, I'm pretty sure. So again, looking at these step by step, we need to start out by initializing our loop. And so we'd set up our loop counter, for example, and start it at 0. Our condition is the while something. The statements are the do something in the middle of the loop. And then the update is moved to the next iteration of the loop. Is that a good size to read? Cool. And then how we actually code this. Our initializer, we have int I, for example, equals 0. I is a very common variable name for our loop iterator. Normally we say, use descriptive variable names, so don't just call your variables A, B, C, D, or like num1, num2, num3. But in this case, because it's just counting the number of times you've gone through your loop, it's sensible to just call it I. It doesn't really have a meaning beyond that. Cool. So initializing, we set up our variable often called I. The condition is while something. So in this case, while I is less than 10. The statement is the do something. So in this case, it's print hello world. Then the update to move to the next iteration of our loop is I equals I plus 1. So we're increasing I. The first time, it'll be 0 starting out. We hit this and it becomes 1. You go around again, it becomes 2, and so on. Cool. Okay. So one of the things with our loops, right, we need to know when to stop. So you'll probably remember if you were here and paying attention yesterday, we had our loop where we didn't increase the counter, so it was just while I is less than 10, do something and never change I. So it just printed forever. So knowing when to stop is an important thing to be able to do in our loops, right? And so like I've just said, we can have loop counters. So something like this, while I is less than 10, print hello world, I is I plus 1. And I think we'll code something with this. I'll show you the next way as well. So another way we can do it is have what we call a Sentinel value or a flag, which is like we set up our thing finished to be 0, for example, and then while not finished, the exclamation mark here means not. Do something, and then at some point set our finished flag to be true or 1 or whatever we want. So these are two common ways, having a loop counter going for a fixed number of times, and then having some flag while we're not finished, do this thing, and then when we're finished, say we're finished. So let's do some coding. Are there any questions so far? I think I might have mentioned there are 3 hard problems in computer science: cation, validation, naming things, and off by 1 errors. There are 2 hard problems. Anyway, naming things is very hard. I know what the program's doing, I don't know what to call it. So, is that font size big enough? I'm pretty sure that's smaller than normal. If it needs to be bigger, please raise your hand. Okay, that's like almost the entire back half. Yeah, it's size 12. How did that happen? If this is still too small, raise your hand. Okay. So our program, like all good programs, should start out with a header comment. So do something interesting with multiples of. So this program is going to do something interesting with multiples of 15. I do have a plan, trust me. 18. It's the 14th today, isn't it? Did you know that we're halfway through March? That's the 3rd month. It's crazy, time is flying. Cool, so our basic program looks like this. Oh, I was close. They're roughly the same number. Okay, so here's our blank program, a blank slate, ready to do anything we want. I want to do something interesting with multiples of 15. So, what's like 15? I don't know, is the word divisors? What are the divisors of 15? I don't know what the word is, the thing that 3 and 5 are of 15. Factors, yes, thank you. I swear I am qualified to be here. I did pass maths a very long time ago. It's like, you know, in school, your teachers are like, oh, you know, you're going to graduate and forget about this stuff. And you're like, no, I'll remember calculus forever. And then 3 years later, you're like, well, what's calculus? I never thought it would happen. So anyway, back on track. Multiples of 15 and 3 and 5. So let's say I wanted to just print out the, I don't know, numbers from 1 to 10. But then if it's a multiple of 3 or 5 or 15, print out something different. So I've said I want to do something with the numbers from 1 to 10. So what am I going to want my code to look like, my loop to look like? I said some words before. One of them started with C and ended with counting. So when I want to do something like a fixed number of times, so for the print hello world 10 times thing earlier, I can just have a loop counter, right? So I equals 0 while I is less than 10, I plus plus. I highly recommend when you're writing a while loop, do this. So write out this bit, write your I plus plus at the end, write your close curly bracket, and then write this off inside. I had a student last semester who emailed me their code like for an assignment at like 4 a.m. the day after, being like, oh, I couldn't sleep. I thought I might have forgotten an I plus plus in my code somewhere. And I was like, yeah, I feel your pain, it's okay. So loop structure, we have our while this condition is true, we have our go to the next condition. And now we need to have our do something. So let's start by just printing the number. So hopefully this is fairly straightforward. I is going to be 0 for a start. While it's less than 10, print it out, I plus plus. I'm sure I said last time that getting windows to be the right size is a very hard problem. It shouldn't be that hard. That you remember the size they were as well. Okay, cool. We'll just go with that. Cool, so it's called 15.c, 15.c. So who thinks this will work and it will print out the numbers between 1 and 10, like I sort of wanted to do? Is it a question or a vote of confidence? Okay. Who thinks it'll print the numbers 0 to 9? Who thinks it will not do either of those things? Okay. So I'm hoping it'll print the numbers from 0 to 9 on the basis that I is 0 to start out with. It'll then print out I and then make I bigger. So at this point here, I will now be 1. It'll go around again, print it again, and so on. Cool, and it is as we had hoped, prints out the numbers from 0 to 9. But I said I wanted 1 to 10, so how do I fix that? Cool, so I could go while it's less than or equal to 10. So this is now going to print the numbers from 0 to 10. Make it start at 1. Cool, that sounds good. Cool, numbers from 1 to 10. You're all sort of talking to yourselves. Do you have questions? Am I just really boring? Are you just really interested in other things? Yeah? What is the 2 plus signs next to I? Very good question. So you might have seen in the slides, I think it said I equals I plus 1. I plus plus is just a shorthand or a way of doing this that's a simpler way to type, because we do this a lot in programming, where you'll add 1 to a variable. So this does the same thing, but is written in a shorter way. I'll leave that there. Yes? I don't know if I heard you. Were you saying, is that the same?
No, I'm saying, you say I,
So if I is less than 11 is the same as less than or equal to 10? Cool. So the question was, is this the same as doing this? Was that your question? Cool. And so the answer to this, right, these are going to do the same thing. Any number that is less than 11 is also less than or equal to 10. Any whole number that's in an integer is going to be like this. Why might we do one way over the other? Like, why did I, by default, write it less than or equal to 10 rather than less than 11? Yeah, I'm running it 10 times, right? So it's clearer to me as a programmer and as a person reading the code, I want to do something up until it is equal to 10. Whereas less than 11 does achieve the same thing. It works exactly the same. But now there's the 11, and it's sort of like, is that relevant? Should it be 10? You know, what exactly is going on? So very good question. They are the same, but I would prefer this way for readability. Cool. And so we ran that already, right? Yes. OK, and now say I wanted to replace the multiples of 3 with a different word. Another question? It's a very good question. Is it possible to print I++? I might leave that question just for a little bit and then try again a bit later. That is an interesting question. If I printed out I++ here rather than doing it down there, what would happen? Was that another question or just a stretch wave? Cool. So have we talked in lectures about how to find multiples of numbers? If you think we have talked in the lectures about finding multiples of numbers, please raise your hand. I don't think we have. I think it was just shoots, maybe. OK. So if we want to see if a number is divisible by another number, in sort of like math words, how will we know that? Like if we have a number, we want to see if it's divisible by 2, what can we do to find that out? Yeah, look at the remainder, right? If we have 2 divided by 2, that's going to be 1 with no remainder. If we have 3 divided by 2, it's going to be 1.5 or 1 remainder 1. So if it divides by the number with no remainder, then it is divisible. Conveniently, we can work out this, does it divide by thing in C? I mod 3, for example. And so this is saying, if we do I divided by 3, the remainder, like give us the remainder from dividing this by this, and if that is equal to 0, then we know it's divisible. So I think instead of printing out the 3 or the multiples of 3, I might just print 3. Is this going to do what I want? So I want this to print like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 as a word, 7, 8, 3 as a word, 10. Is this going to do that, or is this going to have duplications? What can I do to fix the problem that I'm going to have? Because it's going to print out like 1, 2, 3 and the word 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the word 3 again as well. So how can I change this to not print out the number if we're printing it out as a word? Yeah, else statement. Very good. And what do I put in this bit here? The print. Cool. Does this look like it's going to work? Are there any glaring mistakes?
No, but then you'll only print 3 and no other number. When the statement is 3, you'll print 1, 2, and then you'll only print 3 instead of 3, 3.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do. Cool. Cool, and so it's done what I'd hoped. 1, 2, and then this is a multiple of 3. It's 3 itself, so it's printed out the word 3. 4, 5, 3, 7, 8, 3. What's a better word than 3 that I could use? Just Any random word. Any random word that's not fizz. Normally you use the word fizz here, but I want to do something that's not fizz. Does anyone have a favorite word that's not? You guys are so unoriginal. I'll say pop. So now when I run this, it's gonna say 1, 2, pop, multiple of 3, 4, 5, pop, 7, 8, pop, 10. Do you guys have are they called rice bubbles here in the advertising as pop, crunch something? I don't know. Being a child was a very long time ago. Yeah, fizz, crackle, pop, there we go. That can be crackle. And then we can pop later on. Excellent. So it's replacing the multiples of 3 with a different word. And this is happening because we have an if statement here. If it's a multiple of 3, print out crackle, otherwise print the number. Cool. Good so far? Okay, so I said before I want to do things that are interesting with the multiples of 15. And the factors of that are 3 and 5. So how do I also do something interesting if it's divisible by 5? Right? Someone said if, someone said else. I'm going to combine those together into an else if. Right, so just information on the formatting, the indentation and stuff here. Conventionally, the rule is when you have an open squiggle bracket, everything below that gets indented across one. Then when you have the closed squiggle bracket, the bracket goes back and then everything else below it is back there. Cool. And then when you have an else if for an else like this chained together, you just have them on the same line. So else if something, we want to print out pop. So I said I want to do this if it's a multiple of 5. So how do I work out if it's a multiple of 5? Yeah, I mod 5 equals 0. Perfect. So if it's divisible by 3, print crackle. If it's divisible by 5, print pop. Otherwise, print the number. Cool, all good so far. 1, 2, crackle, 4, pop, crackle, 7, 8, crackle, pop. It's like a poem. It's beautiful programming. Is this all good so far? So what if I make it be longer? I don't get any multiples of 15 because I don't reach 15, right? So if I go through to 30, 100, 50, 50. I'll go to 30 because then it'll fit on the screen. So I've just changed it to look from the numbers 1 to 30 rather than 1 to 10. So we can see 1, 2, crackle, 4, pop, crackle, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it's saying here 15 is a multiple of both of them, right? So our code's just printing out crackle and saying, hey, it's a multiple of 3. But actually it's also a multiple of 5. And so we want it to print out both of them here, right? I am defining in this problem, we want to go, if it's divisible by 3, print this. If it's divisible by 5, print this. If it's divisible by both of them, then print both of them. So how could we go about doing that? So I think I heard what you said, and I also heard what you said, and they came at the same time. So I've forgotten your name. That's okay. Yasmin. Yasmin suggested nested if statements, and what's your name? Mina? Mia? Sorry, spell it. M-I-N-A? Mina. Okay, cool. Hello, Mina. You ask a lot of questions. Thank you. It's nice to meet you. I'm Andrew. So yeah, there are a lot of different ways that we can check if it's divisible by both of them, right? We could have a nested loop, a nested if statement. So we could put an if statement inside here that does something, then do something else. And so the logic here would be something like, if it's divisible by 3, if it's also divisible by 5, print them both. Otherwise, just print 1. So that's one way of doing it. Mina suggested, and I think this was a suggestion, it's hard to hear, if we do something like else if it's divisible by I is divisible by 5, and I is divisible by 3. So is this what you meant? Check if they're both there and print them both? Cool, and I can hear you all telling me that there's a problem. What's the problem that I'm going to have here? This way and crackle pop. Yeah, it's never actually going to hit this. And so just to prove that, I'll run it and I'll show you. So I've got a condition in here now, like if it's divisible by both of them, then print out crackle pop, right? But 15 has only printed out crackle.
Wouldn't you want to put the else if statement at the top?
Yes, and so, perfect. So Yasmin, was it Yasmin?
Sorry?
Was your name Yasmin? Yes, you told me a second ago. Yasmin has suggested, what if we put this one at the top? And indeed, we do need to do something like this. The problem with having it down there is that it'll hit this one first, and because it's divisible by 3, it'll go into here and it won't continue going, so it'll never consider this divisible by both of them down the bottom. But if we move it up the top, print crackle pop, and then turn this one into an else if. Cool, and then else print the number. Okay, so we're going, if it's divisible by 5 and 3, print crackle pop, otherwise print crackle, otherwise print divisible by 3, crackle, 5, pop. Otherwise print the number. Does this look good? Do we think that Yasmin got the logic right? Yep, I'm seeing some thumbs up, cool. We have faith in Yasmin, and indeed, there we go, look, it's got, 1, 2, crackle, divisible by 3, 4, pop, divisible by 5, crackle, 7, 8, crackle, pop, 11, crackle, 13, 14, crackle, pop, 16, 17, crackle, 19, pop, crackle. It's very hard to read this. 28, 29, crackle, pop. Beautiful. Cool, and so this is one way that we can approach this problem. If you want something to think about, what are some other ways that you could solve this? Like there are a gazillion other ways that you could structure the if statements, or you could change the logic, or that sort of thing. It's an interesting problem. So how many of you, having seen this, think that you could write this code? If I said, print out if it's divisible by 3 or 5 or 15. So this is allegedly like a common interview question, and they find most people who've been like software engineers for 20 years can't write this code. I guess they forget how to do the very basic things. It's quite a cool thing to code. There's, like I said, a lot of different ways that you can do it, so have a think about those. Okay, are there any questions so far? Say that again. Yes, that would be one way to solve it. I will leave that way to solve it as a secret. So yeah, I'm serious. Have a think about it yourselves if you want to think about cool ways of doing it. Shh. But otherwise, let's do something different. So I said before, the 2 ways we can like stop our loops. How we can have a counter, so like this, when it's less than the number we're after. Otherwise, we can have like a sentinel value or a flag, they call it. Keep doing this thing until this thing is true. So let's save this as crackle pop. flag. So old one can stay there. I'm going to make a new version of this that does the same thing, but it uses, rather than looping for some number of times, it'll stop when we tell it to stop. And so I reckon what this should look like, it should be, we give it a number, right? So we say, here's my number, and it'll print out either the number or crackle pop or crackle or pop, right? So how could I change my logic for that? If I want to do something with the number that the user gives me, and it use scanf, yes, you know scanf? Cool, some nods. So I have to put a scanf somewhere, right? I'm going to make a new one called n. Can start at 1. And so hopefully this code is very familiar to you. This will scan in an integer, a number, and put it into the variable called n. So what I could do here, rather than checking if I is this thing, I can check the number I've scanned in, right? A fun way to write code is to find and replace rather than trying to actually change it yourself, and this always goes wrong. I mod replace with n mod, and this one here. Cool, nothing went wrong. So I'll change this condition to something else in a minute. But I want to make this be, they give me a number, and I tell them whether it's a crackle or a pop or just the number itself, right? And then they give me another number, and then I tell them again. They give me another number, and I tell them again. Is this going to achieve that? Maybe. Let's clarify the problem. So we need to know when to stop, right? Let's say when the user enters 0, then we'll stop. So say something like if n is equal to 0, right? And so the user will type in a number, they'll type in like 15, we'll give them crackle pop, they'll type in like 12, we'll give them, that is a multiple of 3, crackle, and so on. And then if they give us a 0, then we'll stop. So we can then make it, we'll scan in their number, if they give us a 0, our loop will stop, otherwise we'll print out whatever the thing is here. And we no longer need our I++ because we're not having a loop counter, we're just doing the number they give us. Okay, there is a glaring problem in this, which may or may not be evident. That was an accidental problem that should not have been there. So while n is not 0, keep going, and then when n is 0, I should stop. Crackle flag. I don't know if you've seen, I'll put it at the top, tab completion. I've mentioned it a few times. It's a really cool thing you should learn. So when I hit tab, a lot of times it'll tell me, here are the choices it could be right now. So I can type like cr for crackle, hit tab. The only choice I have is crackle pop flag.c. I don't want to make the output file be that I can delete. And then I can hit tab again. This is great if you're bad at spelling, because you don't have to spell it right. It'll tell you the full name yourself. Cool, and so what I want this to do is keep scanning in numbers and then printing out the relevant thing for that number. Shh, be quiet, please. It's a very strange sound. Is it loud enough when I don't make the scary voice, and is it like normal talking loud enough? Cool. Does anyone think I'm talking too quietly? I guess if they did, then they wouldn't be able to hear an answer. It's a very good point. So if they've given me a number that's not 0, do the thing, get another number. Like, as long as they've given me a number, stop when they give me the number 0. This has a problem, though. This isn't going to work. I want it to keep getting new numbers from the person, right? But it's only going to get the number once.
Yeah, it's going to loop forever.
Yes, it's going to loop forever. Well, it might not. So if I type in, say, the number 12, like, n is never changing. N is always 12 in this loop. And so is this going to print crackle forever? Yes. I think this is what I heard you say. Can we scanf like inside the loop? Is that what you said? What a good question. I think we can. Is that okay? It looks like it's too far across. Maybe not. So, is it Emily? No, it's not Ilana. Ilana's someone else. Jane? Annie? Yeah. So Annie has suggested, I'm terrible at names by the way, but I try. Shh. Be quiet. Annie has suggested put the scanf inside the loop, right? And so now what this is going to do is every single time we give it a number, it's going to go through, do the loop. So it'll do this thing on the loop, get to the end, check if this condition is true, scan in a new number, right? And so it's going to get numbers over and over again. So let's run this. So type in a number. What number should I use? I heard 7 and 12, so I'll have 712. It's not a multiple of 3 or 15 or 5. What about if I type in 12? I get a crackle. 15, I get a crackle pop. 3, get a crackle. 5, pop. Ah, it's a multiple of 15. Cool. So -3 is a multiple of 3. Should it be? You sound concerned. I think it's a multiple of 3, right? Because you can give negative. Anyway, I don't know how math works. So remember what I said. Remember I said we want it to be when the user types in a 0, we want to stop. Be quiet. I should keep track of how many times I say that during the lecture and, I don't know, rate the lectures based on the number of times I have to say to be quiet. So is this going to work? When I type in 0, I want it to stop.
Won't it go through one more time?
Yes, won't it go through one more time? Indeed. And so if I type in 0 here, it prints out crackle pop, and then it stops. Is 0 a multiple of 15? Is 0 a multiple of anything? Huh, maybe the computer's wrong. You can't divide by 0. Anyway, apparently it's a multiple of 15. That's cool, we'll go with that. But we can see it's still run through the code, right? We want it to stop when we give it 0, not keep on going. So what do we need to change here? Like at the moment, when it gets 0 at this point, right? And then it keeps on going through this, and then it stops. Yes? Yes, I'm going to pretend I only heard one half of that. Can we put the scanf at the end of the loop? Yes, we can. And so now what this is going to do, right? It's going to go do whatever n is. So if n is divisible by whatever, print whatever, print whatever. And then at the end, scan a new number. And then once it hits the end, it'll go check it again here. And so instantly it scans this and it does nothing else except for check straight away. And so in this case now, this means we'll type in 0 here. It'll go back to the start, check the condition. 0 is not equal to 0, so it'll stop. Cool. Is this going to work?
Or why don't I do something at the beginning as soon as you stop?
Yes, so DCC. The question now, or the comment now is like, what will it do at the start? It'll print 1 straight away, right? We didn't want it to print 1. But then if we type 15, 12, 3, 5. So when we type 0, it now does stop straight away, which is good. But we got the strange 1 at the start. And so that's because n started at 1, right? And so whatever n is to start with, it's going to run through the first time here. And so Annie's other suggestion was, what if we put it outside the loop as well? So does this make sense? Let's look at the flow of the program. We have int n is 1, so we initialize n. We scan a value into n. And so now n has got whatever they typed. While that number is not 0, go through and do all this logic, and then get a new number. And then rinse and repeat. Does this make sense? Is anyone extremely confused? Okay, cool. If you're extremely confused, you are not paying attention or not raising your hand. Clearly it's fine. So I will run this, crackle, flop, flag. I'll clear that. That was not what I wanted to happen. That is also not the right one. This one. Okay. Okay. run our program. So now what we want this to do is we want it to start out by only doing the number we give it the first, so we can see it's not done anything cool. 4, it's done what it should be doing. 5 does what it should be doing. 15, all good. -3, all good. And then 0, will this stop straight away? Yes, it will. Good work, team. Good work, those of you who had suggestions. So does this make sense? We have now written a program that will take in a number from the user, run the loop or run the thing over the number they've given us, and then stop when they give us a specific value. Okay, all good so far? I think this is a good place for a break. So does anyone want to have a break now and then, is it a question or you want to have a break? Cool. Who does not want to have a break now? Who wants to keep going for another 10 minutes? Okay. Who wants to have a break now? Yeah, I'm sorry, the break now wins. What did you say?
You know the answer to that.
So the reason for this is because we're going to do like a new topic next, and so have a break first, clear your minds. So have a 10-minute break, stand up, don't sit down the whole time. If you didn't stand up at any point during the break, please stand up and then sit down again. I wish I could sit down, my legs get sore. Cool, so I hope you've had a refreshing break. I hope that you've had a refreshing break and you've had a chance to refresh your brain and all of those good things. So let's look at another thing. I promised at the start that you would learn today about the course style guide. I guess the obvious question is, what is a style guide, right? I'm saying we have a style guide, what does that mean? The sound's both quiet and feedbacky. Is there like a slight feedbacky sound? Is it because of that? Is that better? Maybe? Oh well, so what is a style guide? And so the idea behind a style guide is that it's a guide for how to style your code. Shh. You just had 10 minutes to talk. Come on, be quiet again now. So a style guide is like a series of guidelines on how to structure your code. The link is here, or you can get it from the course website, which I will show you just to prove that you can. Cool, so course website under resources, style guide. I've had a lot of students over the years say like, oh, style guides are stupid, I don't want to use a style guide. And my sort of best anecdote for this is the first job I had as a programmer was at sort of, fairly small startup company, and this was like my second year of uni, so I was pretty noob at all this stuff, and I wasn't great. And there was no such thing as a style guide or even like an appreciation of style. And you could look at the source files and see who had written which part, because they were so wildly different. Like, the other guy would indent all his stuff out like 14 tabs across this way. And the code was just a disgusting mess. I mean, it was also PHP, so Cold Fusion as well. But it was horrible. It was hard to read, hard to understand. It was just disgusting. And so over the years, I have learned to appreciate the joys of a style guide. And I've done internships in sort of big tech companies as well, and they have style guides. And it's really useful because when you're looking through some code that someone in the company's written or many people have written, you can really clearly see the code, it's logical and it flows on. There's no sort of like distracting, oh, suddenly it's different, suddenly it's different. So style guides are good. I think they're good. Hopefully you'll think they're good over time. But this is our course style guide. So it's document this long. A lot of the stuff in here we haven't seen yet, we haven't talked about yet. As we learn new things, come here and like scroll through and go, oh, that's the guidelines for this new thing. So I'll just go through a couple of things first. The first one is like, what are you allowed to use in the course? The answer is you can use anything you want, even if we haven't taught it to you, but we really recommend you don't. a lot of the things that we don't teach them because it's so easy to like blow things up, or not literally, I hope, but like to make code that's hard to understand, hard to debug, hard to use. So we strongly recommend in bold to only use stuff we've taught in the course. Feel free to use other stuff, it's up to you. Your tutors will not help you if it's a horrible mess and you can't debug it, unless it's explicitly forbidden below. So then there's things like for braces and indentation. So it's describing opening brace should be this, blah, 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 blah. Here's an example. So like this is what good indentation in braces looks like. This is a new thing, this one's been added recently. Those are some good examples of bad code. Is that readable now? So don't do this. Don't have like this, like have the I++ on a line below. Don't do this. Do always have the squiggle brackets, or you will make a bug like go to fail, and you will be responsible for all of the iOS devices having security vulnerabilities. Do not do it. That will happen. And again, they want to line up, because this doesn't look like it's doing just a straight if else if else. Anyway, and so then indentation rules, when to use spaces, like one thing per line of code, lines less than 80 characters. Variable names, use good variable names wherever possible. Use ints and doubles. Loop variables, make it before the loop and only use it for the loop. Don't use things called global or static things. Don't use other libraries, don't do this, don't do that. Like, a lot of this is stuff that you won't know about, so it's fine, you won't try and do it anyway. If you do try and do these things that are in here, it's really bad. There's some really shoddy words. Go-tos, I think. Yeah, so we're saying go-tos shouldn't be used. If you don't know what a go-to is, I'm happy. Basically, this is saying, like, you should never use them. There will be a major style deduction if you use goto. So this is the sort of thing, if you use this thing that you really shouldn't use in your assignment code, you'll lose a lot of marks. But have a read through this. Hopefully it makes sense. The stuff that doesn't make sense, like don't worry, you will learn about it in future weeks. Do have a look at the function stuff. So like naming functions well, arguments, and so on. Anyway, read through this in your own time, but be aware that it exists. All of the code that you write should abide by this. We're not going to deduct marks in labs if you don't, because we don't mark it by hand, because otherwise we can't also help you. We can do marking or we can help you, but not both. But if you have bad style in assignments, you will lose marks. And in general in labs, you should follow the style guide. We won't tell you off if you don't, because we won't catch you, but please use good style. So important, very important. You'll make me sad. If you have bad indentation, I'll be sad. Don't make me sad. My rainbows will like turn into, I don't know, sad, sort of non-rainbow colors. All my happiness will go away. Okay, so style guide ran over, but very seriously do please have a read through this. If you have questions about what any of it means, you can post it on the course forum. I don't know if I'm still logged in. I'm not still logged in. But you can always ask questions on the course forum. They will be answered. There's sort of like a race going between me and one of the other tutors, and we try to race to see who can answer it first. That's why you sometimes get like 3 answers within 1 second of each other. Anyway, so another new thing. I think that might actually, oh no, cool. So another new thing, nested loops, loops inside loops. And I mean, this makes sense, right? We can have if statements inside if statements. Why not have loops inside loops? And so the rough syntax for this, here's our while loop, the outside one, while something, do some stuff. But then the do some stuff on the inside is another while loop. So one example of using nested loops, the thing we can do. Oh, I didn't put new lines in there. My bad. Those should be on new lines. So one thing we can do is print a square, right? If you think of the stuff we've covered so far, so before we had nested loops with just one loop, not a loop inside a loop. Like how could we print out a square? We'd need some way of printing out 4 things and then a new line without kind of, anyway. But what we can do with a nested loop, we can print out things like squares. We can do if you imagine like sort of a 2D plane, so like anything two-dimensional, currently we can do with just one loop, we can do things in one line, right? So we can like print out, you know, crackle, pop, 3, 4, 5. We can sort of do one line of things. With 2 loops, we can sort of do like a whole 2D field of things. With 3 loops, can we print out things in 3D? That'd be fun. So let's walk through this, printing out a square. If you are bored and want a challenge, can you write a program to just print the outside? So don't print all the stars in the middle of the squares. I'm sorry I don't have any other good challenge exercises today. It's really hard to find challenge exercises. Like, it takes a lot of thinking. I've been thinking a lot, and I'll continue thinking a lot, and hopefully I'll have some good ones. Therefore today there's just this sort of mildly challenging print a square, but don't print the insides of the square. Cool, over to VLab. I'm just copying. Bam. Okay, so all of the files that I wrote before and are on the course website, and these ones will be, this one will be as well when we're done. Would it be useful if you could access the file like while I write it, if I save it and then as soon as I've saved it you can access it again? If so, I can set that up for next week, so that when you go to like the course webpage of code, it'll just update live. Anyway, where were we? Stars. Stars, yeah. No, squares. Squares of stars. Print out a square of given width. Why is this not the right colors? What have I done wrong? You said a lot of things. I'm going to guess you said the right answer. Yeah, it's not saved as a .c file. And now that it's a .c file, it knows it's a C code, and so it can give us the nice colors. Scan in some width. Print out a square of width times width stars. Cool, int main void return 0. Okay, so what are the steps that I'm going to have to do here if I want to scan in a number and then print out a square of width by width stars? The first step is pretty easy. Scan in a number, right? Width. Cool, and then print out a square of width by width stars. So let's do an easier problem. Print out a line of width stars. So if I type in 4, just print out 4 stars in a line. A vertical line. Let's make it even easier. Let's just print out 1 star. Cool, so this is like the 0th dimensional version of this. So if I type in 4 as my width, it just prints out 1 star. And if I type in anything at all as my width, it just prints out 1 star. Beautiful program. So how do I make this print out a line of stars then, rather than just 1 star? A loop, yes. What have you just learned to do things over and over again? A loop. While something, do something, go to the next one somehow. So while some condition is true, do something and then go to the next one. The do something is going to be print the star, right? So that's all good. While what? Well, it isn't 4. Yeah, while we aren't up to the number 4. But we need to know we're up to the number 4 by keeping track of it, right? So we make a loop counter. Cool. While I is less than width. Cool, so does this make sense? I have my int I equals 0, so I is now 0. I say while I is less than width, which is whatever number we've scanned in, print out a star, I++, and then it'll go around again. It'll go, so if width is 5, for example, it'll start at 0, So become 1, it'll print it out until it's finished. Shall I run this and see if it works? So print me a square of size 2, print me a line of size 2. Cool. I'll make this a tiny bit wider. Cool, and so if I ask it to print me out 100, that's probably 100 stars. If I get it to print me out 0, what if I get it to print me out like -5 stars? What should it do? How do you print -5 stars? It doesn't do anything. Maybe it should delete stars from the previous history. Who knows? So, okay, this is making us a line of the number of things we told it to make. How do we make this give us a square? What if I ask a slightly easier question? How do I print out a line that's going along horizontally rather than vertically? I'll copy this over here so that it is safe for the moment. And again, this is just a way of commenting out the code so now the compiler won't look at it. So if I wanted to print them in a line rather than all on new lines, I can just not print out the new line character. So what this is going to do now, rather than printing star, new line, star, it's going to print out star, space star, space star, space star. Or so I hope. Cool. So it's printed out 5 stars. 5 out of 5. This lecture has got a 5-star rating. So I hope. 8 stars is given us 8 stars. 1 star, we get 1 star. There's the problem though, like what are we missing? Why is this still on the same line? Yeah, I need to print a \n somewhere. When I had it here, it just gave me a row of stars. But if I just print it once at the end, new line, so now it's going to do all the stars. Then right before the end of the program, it'll print out the new line, and then it'll return. Cool, and so if I say 5 stars, new line, beautiful. Okay, so we've seen how to draw lines and how to draw other lines, like up and down and sideways lines. How do we combine this together? If we want to print out a square of 5 by 5 stars, what do? Like, we can take this code, this prints out 1 line of 5 by 5 stars. We need to print out like 5 lines of this. So what could we do if we want to do something lots of times? We can use a loop, right? In here? So that'll just give us the 1 row. The question was, can we just add a new line here? That just gave us the vertical row before. Like that. So this is, again, going to do the same thing. This is the same as having it there. But if we want to do something multiple times, right, we use a loop. Yes, one person knows what's going on. So I've got my like print a row of stars thing, and I want to do this multiple times. I want to like print out a row of stars multiple times. You know what? Let's make a function. I like functions. Some type print row of stars and take an 8 width. So I'm going to make a function, and this function will print me out a row of stars. What return type should this be? Is it going to return anything to me? Does it make sense for it to give me a value back? Had a couple of people muttering void. So it should be a void function because it doesn't give us anything back, right? It'll just print out the stars. So let's go down here, full screen. So does anyone remember why I have to have this up the top and then the function down the bottom? Any ideas? Lots of people said different things, and I think they were probably all the right answer. So it knows about it, right? The compiler needs to know about the function before I can call it. So to make my function print out a line of stars, I'm just going to cut the code from here, like remove the code here, put it in here. That printed out a row of stars. And so now, I claim that this program would do exactly the same thing as it did before. I'll delete that. It's commented out, so it's not doing anything, but it's also not an out way now. So I claim this function does exactly the same thing as that program did before. Who believes me? Who doesn't believe me? Who has no opinion because they're confused? Who just wants to raise their hand now for no reason? Okay, fair enough. So what this is going to do, make a variable width, scan a value into it, call this function print row of stars, giving it this width value. And so that's going to jump down here. It's going to go, okay, I'm making myself int I 0 as a loop counter. While I is less than width, print out a star, I++. Then after it's printed out all the row of stars, it'll print out a new line. And in theory, this means it'll do exactly the same thing, and it does. So I type in 5, prints out 5 stars, and it's done. To 10, I get 10 stars, and I'm done. So we said before, if we want to do something lots of times, we can do it in a loop, right? So if I wanted to print out, if I wanted to call this function a bunch of times so that I could be printing out lots of rows of stars, I need to put that in the loop, right? So what is my loop going to look like? While something, it's going to be while something because they're while loops. So I'm missing 3 lines here. What goes in one of these lines? Someone pick one and tell me the answer. Someone said int? Cool, int goes here. Int I? Cool, started at 0. While I is less than width. Cool, and then this one here should be conveniently written down there. I++. Cool, and so this loop down here printed out star, 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 printed out stars with number of times. This loop here is going to call this function with number of times. What do you think this is going to look like when we're finished, when we run it? Have I succeeded in my code? Will I get a square? I hope I'm going to get a square. I think I'm going to get a square. Yeah, square. Very small round of applause. Cool. Is this kind of surprising? Like, we got a square and we didn't really expect a square? I said it would be a square, but we've only got the one while loop, right? So I said before we can have while loops inside while loops. And that's effectively what we've done here. I'll call this one square functions. Then I'll also save it as square no functions. So I'll leave my version here for safekeeping. This is the one we've just done. And this one, I'll remove the functions. So you know how I've said, like, if you want to make a function, just take the code out of the main function and put it in a function? To undo that, we can just take the code out of the function, put it in the main function. So let's just literally do that. Cut and paste. The indentation did not go well. Cool. Okay, I'll from function. So the stuff in between those comments there is the code that was in the function. Hold that thought. So my function's empty, whatever, we're not going to call it, it's fine. So now this is going to do my outside loop, right? While I is less than width, do the stuff from the function. Then I++ go run again. So that's all good. Is this going to work? I've got one fatal flaw. question for you. Pretend you didn't see me just do that. What happens, so you know when we go like DCC-O, square, no functions, and this is the name of the program it's going to make. This is the name of the output file that it's going to make. What happens if I make this be named after my C function? What do you think is going to happen if I'm taking my C code and making it into a program that's called the same thing as my C code? Yeah, my C code will get overridden by the program. Thankfully, DCC will not overwrite your C program with machine code. Thanks, DCC. But other compilers will. GCC. There we go, happily done that. So now if I open my square with no functions, it's already here. It's changed on disk. Do you want to reload the file? Sure, let's reload it. Could not revert the file. Oh, okay, let's look at it in cat. So my C function, right? Cat is the one that prints it out to the screen. I'll put it into less, which means it'll sort of go into a thing and it'll hopefully be less terrible. So my C code lost. My C code is gone. This was my C code. Now this is not my C code. You don't want this to happen. You want to be very, very, very careful when you compile your code that you're not going to do this. Because then you have to like rewrite your program from scratch, right? If you do this and you have an old version saved, that's good. If you had an old version yesterday, they do backups every night so you can get it back. But if you don't, then I'm sorry, this is now your C code. But thankfully, I have a backup. No functions.c.backup. Square no functions.c. Problem solved. Ta-da! And this, kids, is why you should take backups. Okay, where were we? I compiled my thing. So I ran my DCC. I'm not going to call it .c, I'm going to call it the right thing. Hang on. Why did that compile? Okay, that shouldn't have compiled. Huh. Well, why did that compile? Can you do that? Okay. Okay. The magic word here is scope, and we'll look at that next week. So what's happened here, right? I've said, shh. I've said give me a square that's 5 by 5, and before I got a square that was 5 by 5, and now I'm getting a square that's 5 by like infinity. Something bad has happened. What is the bad thing that has happened? Let's have a look at this code. Let's walk through it. So we're going to go I is 0, while I is less than width, so like while it's less than 5, I is 0. While I is less than 5, print out a star, I++, print out a new line. Sorry, it'll do this bit here. It's going to keep going around. I is going to be 0, it's going to print it out, become 1, it's going to go around again, become 2, 3, 4, 5. When it's 5, it'll stop because it's no longer less than width. Print out a new line, and then it'll go I++. So I is now 6. That should be more than width. Oh, and then it's here, right, of course, of course. Then it goes into here again, it goes I is 0 again, goes around. But the problem that's happening here, right, the problem is that this outside loop is using I to keep track of how many times it's gone through. This inside loop is changing I. So the outside loop can't rely on I anymore. It's going, I believe that only I am changing I, so I will always be what I expect it to be. But the inside loop is also changing I. Like, what a monster, right? Horrible, horrible code. So the solution is to change it to, say, J. J is another common loop counter. If you have a loop inside a loop, normally you have I and J. So now, 5. Yeah, 5 by 5 square. Cool. Does that make sense? You have a question. So the question was, how do you do a hollow square so without the insides? That is a challenge for you. And if you have worked it out or when you have given up, I can show you next week or show you later. But yeah, that's a cool puzzle, right? Can we write a program? Well, I reckon I can really quickly write a program that'll print out the square with no insides. How would I do that? Oops. This is the only time you intentionally want to hit the insert key in your keyboard. If you've ever seen like this, right, your cursor changes and you type stuff and it just overwrites. That's called the insert key. And this is the only time you want to use it is when you want to change your squares to look like this. Okay, here is my program that prints out a square with no inside. Ta-da! I did it. This is cheating, right? This is not the way you should solve it. Because how do I print out a square that's bigger or smaller? You know, I could totally do this. This is also not the solution. Right, I can go if width is 4. If width is 3. Can you see why this is like not actually a solution? There we go. See, it totally does what it should, right? I can say, print out a square. That's hollow. A square of width 3. Look, it made me a hollow square of width 3. This is not the right answer. But it's one answer. What's the problem with doing it this way? What if I said in the lab, like, say this was a lab exercise. Shh, be quiet. Say this was a lab exercise, and I said that you need to print out like hollow squares that have a width between 1 and 1,000. Why is this not a good way to solve it? Yeah? Yeah, you have to like copy and paste this 1,000 times. It's horrible. A much better way would be to actually work out the rules you could use to achieve it. Hollow. There we go. Print it out by cheating. Anyway, moving back on. So our squares, are the squares all good, making sense? We had our single loop, our single while loop, and then that would print out either one horizontal or one vertical row. And then we made a function that would print out a horizontal row. Then we called that function in a loop. And so then that would print out row, 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 row. And then we put the code from the function inside the other loop, so we had a loop inside a loop. Cool, I can get rid of that one, that's the backup. Are there any questions about this so far? Yes. Ah, yes, the real code. Yes. If you want, I will copy this. Copy. Mod. Cool. So if you go, whoa, wrong button. If you go to the course website, go to lectures, go to week 3 lecture code. All the stuff I just wrote is here if you want to look at it. Ta-da! Okay, I will do another example. Okay, so here's another problem we can solve, another thing we can look at. Let's say that you're going to scan. I'm going to give you a bunch of numbers, and I want you to print out the biggest number. So I'm going to give you a bunch of numbers. I'm going to say, I'm going to give you 5 numbers, and then I'll give you like 3, 10, 20, -2, 0, and you need to print out the biggest one of those numbers. Do you think we can do that with a program? Yes, because programs can do anything. Is there anything that programs can't do? Someone said no. Someone said write the program. Programs can write programs. Programs can change themselves. But can you write a program that will tell you if another program will stop? Like if you have a loop in a program, right, and you want to know if the program will loop forever, how can you do that? See if you can think of a way. Stop saying you can't, negative people. But let's look at this other one. Scan in some numbers. Find the maximum of those numbers. Okay, I'm going to make my program. I'm going to do the wonderful program thing. No one's paying attention because you're all like, oh, I'm so good at programming. Andrew's so boring. Who cares what Andrew says? Turn 0. Okay, program, blank slate. Scan in some numbers and tell me the maximum of those numbers. So let's say that it should work like this. You'll say, how many numbers do you want to enter? Cool, so full screen. So the program's going to start out by printing out how many numbers do you want to enter, scanning that in. And then somehow do something. Do something here, and then the biggest one was... Cool. So does the problem make sense? We want to write a program. You tell it, I'm going to give you like 10 numbers. You somehow get 10 numbers and then print out the biggest one of those 10 numbers. Cool. How would we do this? How would we approach this problem? Any ideas? So I find when I'm programming, it helps me to sort of write out the steps, like with comments, before I try and write the code. So breaking this down, to find the maximum of some numbers, we first need to scan in the first number, scan in the second number, and so on. So this would be scanning in a loop, okay. How do we tell if the first number is bigger than the other numbers? That's a bit hard because we haven't seen the other numbers yet. What if we make an easier problem? How do we tell if the second number is bigger than the first number? I'm hearing some murmurs of if statements. I can say something like, if first number is greater than second number, I'll uncomment that. First is bigger. Right, this is hopefully straightforward. If a number is bigger than another number, then the bigger number is bigger. Right, sort of by definition. So if I were doing this not in a loop, I could just go like int first. So I'm going to print out the bigger one. First is bigger than second. Print out that one. Else. If. Second. Okay, does this program make sense so far? It's a really not functional version of what we wanted it to do. We've already got a printf here. Let's just make that be the maximum. Okay, so our code looks like this. We scan on the first and the second number. If the first is bigger than the second, then that's the maximum. Otherwise, if the second is bigger than the first, that's the maximum. Then print it out. Cool, so let's pretend we only want to enter two numbers. Oh, how convenient. So if we type in like 5 and 2, the bigger one was 5. If we type in two numbers, we want to type in like 100 and 5, the biggest one was 100. So hopefully this is straightforward. I get two numbers, and then if one is bigger than the other one, that is the biggest number. Otherwise, the other one's the biggest number. But if we wanted to do this, like, again, if I wanted to do this 1,000 times, you could copy it out 1,000 times, but that would be really boring and painful. So if you want to do something multiple times, you can use a loop. So how would I use a loop for this? How can I do something like this? Because I have like my first and my second, right? But I need to somehow make this be flexible for if I have numbers that I'm scanning in multiple times. Let's start out by setting up our loop. Is there a keyboard shortcut to like comment this out? Nope. Okay. There are keyboard shortcuts in some editors to just comment our code. Let's get rid of all of that. Goodbye code. Come back later. Okay, while something, do something, go to the next one. Cool, so a loop, initialization, condition, statements, and what did I call the last one, like incrementing? Moving on. Update, that's the word. So I need to start out with my loop. I need to set up something for my loop. So if I want to go through like numbers, I want to have a counter, right? This is a counting loop. So int I. I want to do something with like numbers, this many numbers. So I can go while I is less than num. At the end, I'm going to do I++. And then in here, somehow, these question marks are work out which one's the biggest number, somehow. How could I do this? How could I approach this? Call a function. What will the function do? If we could just call a function to tell us the maximum number of all the numbers, then we'd just do that already, right? That'd be the problem solved. What function? We can't just magically call a function. The suggested answer was just call a function. I mean, yes, there would be a function that we could write to find the maximum number. We need to do something ourselves there, right? We need to somehow solve this ourselves. I said that we wanted to scan in a bunch of numbers, right, and test the numbers. So let's scan in a number for a start. What shall I call it? This is the number that the user has just typed in. Thoughts on a good name? User input, it's a bit of a long name. Count, it's not a counter. I is the counter. I might just call it like, I had a really good name, like current. So like the current value that they've typed in. Scan into current. Yeah, easy parts of the program. Make variables, scan into them. Now I want to do something here that will lead to me having the maximum number at the end. So if we think back to our code we had here for like the first is greater than second, first or second thing, right? How could I use this idea? Copy in here. So this worked just fine when we had a first and a second, right? We just had two values. What could I do here to, I don't have just first and second, I have like the current one that I've scanned in and I have my overall maximum. So what could I do here? Could I sort of borrow this logic? What if I went like, if current is greater than the maximum? So what is this going to do, this bit of code here? We're going to scan in the current number, so like let's say they've typed in 10. If 10 is bigger than the maximum number is 10. So then if we go around again and I type in 15 this time, like current's going to be 15. Maximum was 10 from before because the previous number we had was 10. 15 is more than 10, so maximum is going to now become 15. Does this seem like it'll work? Who is confused by what I've said? Nobody has raised their hand, but also I was looking at the computer, not the people. Yes, do you have a question or you're confused? Can you think of a question about why you're confused that I can answer to help you be less confused? I know it's horrible trying to make you work out why you're confused. It's very hard because if you don't know why you're confused, if you don't know what you don't know, then how do you ask a question about it? One of life's biggest problems. So, looking at our code here, let's sort of walk through it one at a time. So, we say, how many numbers do you want to enter? And then they say, I want to enter 5 numbers. Then we have our I, while I is less than 5. We have a current number, we scan into a current number, so whatever they type in, we scan in. If that number is bigger than the maximum, then make our maximum be this number. So for example, if, let's say like current is 5, and the maximum so far is 10. This is going to go 5 is not more than 10, so it won't do anything. But if the current was like 100 and the max was like 10, 10 is bigger than 100, so this line would happen, and max becomes 100. Okay, does that make a little bit more sense? Are you slightly less confused? Shall we run it and see what happens? Yes. So did you say, do we have to define what the maximum is? Yeah, so that's a very good question. This will go, like looking at our maximum so far and our current number that we've just scanned in. If the current number is bigger than our overall maximum so far, then make the overall maximum be this number. But the overall maximum currently is just like nothing, right? So how can we... That was not the button I meant to push. What should this start out as? What would a sensible value be? Someone said a negative number. Negative, what's a big number? 9 million? Oh. Is that a million? Cool. So we start out with our maximum being negative 9 million. If we type in the number 1, is 1 more than negative 9 million? Yes. So as soon as we type in the number 1 here, that'll become our new maximum number. We've typed in 1, it's bigger than our current initial maximum of negative 9 million. So the maximum now becomes 1. Let's add some more printfs in here. Printf. The current number is... and then let's put in here, the new maximum is... Cool, so looking at these lines that I've written here, Inside the loop, it'll print out what the current number is and the current maximum. Then if we update it, it'll say what the new one is. So let's run this. What's this complaining about here? Variable I is uninitialized when used here. What does initializing mean? Yeah, giving it an initial value. If I don't give this a value here, what's the value going to be? Yeah, some strange random number. If I make it be 0, then it's now going to go through, it'll become 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way till getting to num. And so when you're making like your loop counter, you want to, what? I just changed, right, this is one down here. When you make your loop counter, you need to initialize it to something. This is complaining that I have a comment inside a comment, so I might be making a mistake. I'm not making a mistake. I know what I'm doing. Just trust me, computer. Cool. How many numbers do you want to enter? 5 numbers. What number should I type in first? Someone said 17. Okay. So the current number we've typed in is 17. We can see this line here we're up to. The current maximum is -9 million, this line here. Then the new maximum is 17, so it's saying this line has happened. 17 is bigger than -9 million, so maximum becomes 17, then the new maximum is 17. So now if I type in 15, say, the current number is 15. We've looped around here. I've scanned in another current number, it's 15. The current maximum is 17 from before. It's not, 15 is not more than 17, so we've just sort of moved on. So if I type in, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. We can see these were not bigger, so they just said so, and then I typed in 100. 100 is bigger than 17. Then at the very end here, it said the biggest one was 100. Does that make sense? Sort of? Yes. Why does scanf being... so do you mean like why do I not have this? I don't understand your question. Okay, you don't understand your question either. So you've seen in labs we have like what we call a prompt. We prompt the user to tell us something. So we could say, for example, when we want them to give us a number, we could say, give us the next number. So when I enter 5 numbers, enter the next number, 10. And so on. Cool. Any other confusions or questions? Yes? So question was, why is there an I++ at the end? And so this is what we've called like a counting loop. I++ is our loop counter. We want to do something a certain number of times. We want to, in this case, scan in a number num times. And so to do something num times, or in a number of times, we need to have our loop counter. Starts at 0, increases at the end of the loop, and so keeps on going until we've hit the number of times. Cool. How about I get rid of these printfs, so it just looks magical. So now it's not going to tell us like any progress, it's just going to do what we say. I want to enter 8 numbers, enter the next number. Cool, so you can see, I typed in some numbers. The biggest number was in fact this one here, and the computer has told us the biggest number was this one here. Cool, good work computer, you did what we told you to. So if you want something to think about, how would you change this to find the smallest number? Shh. 2 minutes less. Be quiet. Shh. See, that one works. So how could we change this to find the smallest number? I will let you think about that. I think, before we pack up, I'm not going to forget this time, I have made another feedback form, just in case you weren't sick of feedback forms yet. So again, if you have any feedback from this week, I would very much like to hear it. Link, thing, QR code. Otherwise, farewell, oh dear students. Good luck in your treats and labs this week.